All right, well, good morning once again, and it's time for AM Talk on the AM show, and the conversation is going to be about the 1992 Constitution. We started the conversation, well, one of the things we're going to be talking about is the 1992 Constitution. We started the conversation yesterday when we had experts joining us to talk about it. Now we're going to bring in the legislators. So we have two MPs joining us, and we're going to be hearing from them what they make of calls for a new constitution. There are those who are saying that we should do away with the constitution altogether and have a new one. And there are others who believe that, no, we should probably look at changing a few things and continue with review or amendments to the constitution rather than a wholesale. And we're going to be speaking with two MPs. You have Alhassan Sunyini, who's MP for Tamale North. He's a member of Lands and Forestry and Appointment Committees. And then we also have in studio Dr. Stephen Amwa. He's MP for Nshaiso. He's a member of the Finance and Privileges Committees. So thank you very much for making time to join us. To you, Alhassan Sunyini, and to you, Doctor. So welcome to the AM show. Good morning to you, Alhassan Sunyini.
Thank you for having me.
Hello, Alhassan Sunyini. If you could just unmute so we can hear you. Good morning to you.
Yes, I'm sorry about that. Good morning, Israeli. Good morning to Doc too.
All right. And are you going to go to Bongo? I saw your post about Bongo water.
I've been expecting my very good friends from Bongo to come to my aid because my appetite for the water is unquenchable.
All right. So for those of you who are not getting the Bongo joke, would mention that in a bit. But thank you very much, Doctor. Good morning to you. Are you aware of the Bongo joke?
No.
Okay, so the DC was saying that there's a high number of teenage pregnancies in his district, and he attributes it to the water that they're drinking.
Oh.
Yeah, he says it boosts potency. No, Alhassan Sunyini will probably be in a better position to tell us about that story. So you're more familiar with the story.
Well, Israel, I thought that you guys reported on it, and you will have more of the gist than I do. The truth is that, yes, I think you have captured it well. The DCE claims that the high incidence of teenage pregnancies in the district is as a result of the water that they drink because it has some high sexual potency. As to how he came about that, he claims that a nurse told him, and he doesn't doubt it, because perhaps he has some experience. So perhaps that is why a lot of people try the Bongo water.
Maybe he's joking.
So Doc is in the studio. Is experience as in?
Well, he lives there. He's a district chief executive, and a nursing officer tells him something, and he says that he.
Yeah.
So,
or maybe he's privy to a piece of information we are not privy to.
Well, as Alhassan Sunyini is saying, he lives there. So if he comes out to tell it, they say if a crocodile comes out of the water to tell you that the water is a new Viagra, who are we to?
Is it a lake or running river?
I think maybe the boreholes.
Okay.
But generally he's making.
It's river, then wherever it flows to, all the teenagers along that stretch will be getting pregnant. And normally they flow and join the sea. So then it was going to be.
So it means if that was a kid. Okay, I'm not sure I think it's more of the. He didn't say. Okay, but we're making reference to the water from the air, and all of a sudden, Bongo water is being talked about as the new Viagra.
Is it Viagra or the fertility? It could be that it's not necessarily Viagra, but it contains something that when you drink, it boosts your system to get pregnant easily. It's possible, maybe.
Anyway, we probably may have to investigate and have the FDA go there and check the water and see if they'll pass it.
It would have been the greatest tourist site in the
Well,
world.
Israel,
Yeah.
just maybe for information, what I have found out is that the water table in Bongo is very low, and so they tend to have a lot of drought. Many of them depend on boreholes, and unfortunately, the water that they even find when they drill these boreholes tend to have a lot of chloride in it, and it is something that has been known to affect the development of bones, especially the teeth. And so many people from that area tend to have some problems with their teeth, discolored teeth and all of that. That is the problem I have known to be associated with people from that area as a result of the water that they drink. As to whether that, also contributes to their libido, I'm sure, like you said, the scientists may have to.
I think he's changing the story.
He's changing the story. He's not changing the story.
If what you are saying is...
How am I changing it?
No, good morning, Honorable, my brother. If what you guys are saying is anything to go by, he's rather creating correlation between the water and fertility, not necessarily libido.
No, it wasn't just fertility. He didn't just talk about fertility.
But the pregnancy is not necessarily as a result of high libido, but fertility, or?
Oh, you see, all of this would have been settled if we had Manasseh Azuri Awuni, investigative journalist, go to the area and investigate, and so you come and tell us a story. So I wouldn't have to be engage in this back and forth. Manasseh, if you're watching, please go to Bongo.
Do us the favor.
Yes. Yeah, that's where actually Manasseh comes from. So if we're looking for someone to corroborate the story, who better than Manasseh Azuri? All right, but let's get into our conversations for this one. This is just a side issue. And on the front page of the Daily Dispatch, there's also the story, Doc, yours featured here on the front page, Stephen Yama taking his Inshaiso seat to another level. What is it that you're doing at Inshaiso that it's taking the seat to another level?
Thank you very much for this opportunity. My greetings to our viewers this morning.
And your constituency.
And my constituency, of course, they just by the grace of God, through them, I'm here. So they know I regard them greatly. What I've tried to do is to create permanent interface for interaction between the people and the government through my outfit. So I have set up a small, a very nice office that is going to be operated between Mondays 8 to 5 to Friday 8 to 5.
Okay.
So all concerns, all questions, everything that somebody doesn't understand, you have to come in. So that even when I go back on weekends, I can go through them and see those I can respond to or extend to the government. And also, I've set up development committees, Central Committee, Education Committee, Technical Skill Acquisition Committee, Security Committee, Environment Committee, Youth Development Committee. And we have professors and doctors being members and chairpersons.
Of those committees.
So we want to use this open culture system, bring everybody on board, and model that I describe as sense of community to help us develop our communities. And also bring in the corporate entities to also actually lay their corporate social responsibilities and help us, because if you want to wait on only government, it will be difficult. Yeah. Our schools are getting deplorable, our environment, and then insecurity in the area. So this is what I've tried to do. All
right. Thank you very much. So let's get into the conversation. And I want to start with you, Alassane Suyene. So there's been talk for a change in the Constitution. There are those who are saying that, no, let's not change the Constitution, and that we could do with some amendments. I want to start with you. What do you make of the calls for a change? Are you for the change or for a review, or we should just keep it as it is?
Well, I think that our Constitution has served its purpose. It was written during a certain period that we were about embarking on this democratic experiment after so many interruptions in our governance system by the military. I call it the period, the decade that ended the period of decay. If you recall, President Rawlings, when he came with the coup from the 80s, managed to make it perhaps the last coup, and we hope it will be forever, and ushered in the 1992 Constitution. Now, the Constitution, if you study it well, was also guided by the experiences of previous democratic governments. For example, when you have a situation where majority of members of parliament are appointed ministers, it's as a result of the experience that we had during the Liman regime, where the government could not have its budget passed. So they thought that the fusion can help bring that harmony between the legislature and then the executive. So a number of things that happened in past democratic regimes informed some of the decisions that were, carved into the Constitution. Again, we had a number of coups, as I indicated, and Jerry Rawlings was transitioning as a coup maker into a democratic leader. And so there was still that fear of military interruptions, and the possible of military interruptions. And so it also informed those who were writing the Constitution to factor in the period, the happenings around the time. But by the grace of God, I think that over a period, 20 years plus, we've come a long way. And some of the things, some of the factors that were considered for which certain decisions were taken as part of the Constitution have long outlived their usefulness. And I think we have come a full circle. And it is time for us to begin to look at some of those things. They have outlived their usefulness, but they are still in the Constitution. Again, some of them have been overtaken by time, and yet they still remain in the Constitution. And that is why I think that this discussion is long overdue. Right. You recall under the presidency of President Professor Mills, the Constitutional Review Commission was put in place. We spent a lot of money. It was made up of very distinguished, personalities. I recall Dr. Raymond Atugba, now Professor Raymond Atugba, was the secretary of that commission, I think, and they went around the country, they interacted with various groups and people, and came up with a very, very beautiful document. In that document, most of the things that have, resulted in this present discussion were captured. And I recall under President Mahama also, a white paper was issued on the work of the, the Constitutional Review Commission. A white paper was issued on the Constitutional Review Commission. And we have not actually moved forward from that white paper. I think it is time for us to move from that white paper and look at those provisions that the Review Commission, came up with. Those areas that we, in their view, the interactions that they had with people had to be relooked at and changed. And I believe that if we go back to that report, to move the discussion forward from the government white paper at the time, we will be addressing many of the concerns that are currently raised. So I am for a review. I think the nation has been for a review for some time now, and that is why the commission was put up. And so it's just a matter of us picking up the pieces from where we left off. From the white paper, I think that the discussion can flow from there, and we will if there's a need to fine-tune anything, we will all contribute to fine-tuning that.
All right, so I'll put the same question to you, Dr. Amoah. Where do you stand? Review, scrap, or let's maintain the status quo?
Thank you very much. I'm not a legal practitioner. So
Oh
probably,
no! And this conversation, that's another. This conversation is not about legal
I
practice.
just wanted to draw the preamble, like the basis on which I'm going to speak.
All right.
Because maybe we have other listeners who are probably in those specific areas, and sometimes when you speak, they think that's why I'm just drawing attention of.
Because when
I'm speaking as an ordinary man.
When the Constituent Assembly was put together for the drafting of the 1992 Constitution, it drew people from all walks of life.
Of course. So maybe I will speak as grassroots person, as defined by Ghanaians, which also fit into what you are saying. I think, in my opinion, there are growing and changing needs of the people. And for that matter, we need to first do very comprehensive review of the whole Constitution.
All right.
And see which extracts are important to stay as they are, and those we need to amend or even scrap. We, as a people, must understand the fact that even sometimes a constitutional extract, just simply because of the size of the population today, might not augur well for us to still use. Just the changing needs in terms of our infrastructure, our development, and even the entrenchment and integration of global processes and other requirements, because we are day in and day out getting more entrenched, more integrated into global issues. And sometimes there are conflicting issues that we need to amend our constitution to be on board. There's this thing about our laws, that when I was CEO of Maslock, I had a very strong argument with one of my bosses, is it then Dr. Akoto, former Deputy Finance Minister, on this issue of what the PFM Act says about some of these are laws. And I think even in our constitution, we have issues relating to those areas. And I think there was a clash of two legal instruments, that even when a budget is approved for specific expenditure outlay and is not released, you cannot even spend if you have money.
Okay.
And that it was quite broad to the extent that it includes even emolument, salaries. But you also know that if people work for you for some time, you're not paying them, it's also illegal.
Yeah.
So sometimes, under all governments, you realize that for 6 months, release for emolument or salaries is not done. You have IGF. People are not being paid. That means if you are to go strictly by the PFM Act or even by the law, you won't pay them for 6 months.
You can't touch
and that is also
IGF.
That is also against the law.
Yeah.
So there was a clash of two legal instruments. And it raised a lot of argument. I mean, when I said this, I'm not a legal practitioner. What I'm trying to say is that there are so many gray areas in our constitution today. And sometimes it creates controversies, argument. It makes people act, sometimes not necessarily in bad faith or in any dubious attempt to probably misappropriate state funds or put up any antisocial behavior or actions and inactions dysfunctional or inimical to the performance of our republic. However, the law can catch up with the person and the person can be jailed. I hope you understand.
Yeah.
So I think it is time, as my brother from the minority side, Honorable Suhini, said, I think it is time. We've gone through the full cycle. As to whether we should throw away everything and do a new one, I think we need to do very constructive analysis of the issue and have the best alternative taken. We should consider whether scrapping, sometimes you scrap the whole thing and still repeat some of them. So
It's
what's the
most
point?
like- yeah, it's most likely,
Sometimes scrapping the whole thing will mean that we need to spend more. And now we have issues with money as a country. Sometimes even trying to do careful review and take extract will rather cost us more. So I think we need to sit down and bring on board all stakeholders and decide before we take the action to either amend or change the entire constitution.
Okay.
I think it's extremely important.
But then Alassane Suini also makes the point that a lot of work has been done already. It started with the late President Mills. And so why don't we go to that and take whatever they have done?
Yeah, I think that would be all part of, if that is what he's saying is true, which I think is true. I don't think he will lie for anything. For anything. It has to be considered in the process and see that probably even the work done at that time, still we have to change something because we've had a few years. Or they are the best to fit. Probably even the work done, we may not need to even do any extra, only just amend and insert those things we need. So I'm saying that it has to be done, one, holistically, two, we have to bring relevant stakeholders on board, relevant. Sometimes my problem in our country is that there are people who do not have the requisite expertise in some of these exercises, but they find their ways into the committees and the bodies managing it. That's why we have problems. We shouldn't think of whether somebody is in opposition or in government or somebody is A or B. We need to analyze carefully the social stratification and see which segments fit into this exercise so that we can have something which will benefit the state. And mind all of us, nobody's going to be in power in perpetuity. So we need to get a document that will serve the needs of Ghanaians, not at specific time for certain defined group. No, I think we need about amending the constitution or changing it. To me, is of importance. We need to find a very critical.
Okay, so one of the things we've heard from the conversations that have taken place so far is the conversation that yes, we had a constitution, or we put together a constitution that was to give us political stability, which was because we're transitioning from a military regime or a military era to a democratic era. So we needed political stability. Almost 30 years after that, we probably have attained the political stability, and now we should be having a constitution that will bring development. Now, the president has been speaking.
So this one hasn't brought development.
Okay, so not that he hasn't brought development, but it should be more development oriented.
I agree. Probably make changes that will make sure that modern day development can be actually attained in a way we want it. But if they say that we need a constitution that will rather bring development, but because the other one was just transitional stuff.
No, it was more politically.
It cannot be taken like that.
But let me bring in Suini. Do you agree that yes, in fact, from the conversation, what you've said so far, you actually appreciate that we created or we had a constitution that was taking care of a certain era. Now, there's some who are saying that let's now be focused or have a constitution that's looking more at development. Okay, it turns out we have lost Alassane Suini, but I'll be putting that question to you. But let's get to hear what the president has had to say. The president has spoken about talks about the calls for a new constitution, and he doesn't quite think that we should he feels that we should be cautious when it comes to talk about reviewing the constitution, because he believes that this constitution has served us well. Let's get to hear the president, and then we'll come back to the conversation.
There are people around this table, Dr. Akwete is one of them, who know about my attitude to the effort that one of my predecessors, the late Professor Mills, made to revise the Constitution. I never agreed with the methods by which the whole undertaking was taken. I don't believe that the Constitution is the work of the President of the Republic. Having regard to the difficulties that our country has had to arrive at a multi-party constitutional dispensation that has endured, and the Fourth Republic is the one that has endured. We saw the First Republic, which had its own problems, authoritarian rule, one-party rule. We had the problems of the Second Republic. We had the problems involved in the Third Republic, all of which were short-lived. To have a republic that has lasted nearly 30 years in the context of our history, to change the constitutional arrangements that have assisted this durability, we should be very careful how we go about it. I feel very strongly on that point, and that is why I have not lent my support to the idea of this wholesale review of the Constitution. The one area which I felt required action was the one that I put before the country, which was the extension of multi-party democratic rule to local governments.
All right, so that's President Akufo-Addo. He spoke about a week or so ago, and that's his position. He feels that for him, when it comes to the election of MMDCs, that's what he feels strongly about, and that's what he tried to do, but that didn't quite work out. So that's the president's position. But yes, coming back
I think if you heard him very well,
yeah,
he's not against making changes in the Constitution. He's rather not for wholesale, that is changing the entire thing. That's what he said it right now. And two, even with Professor Mills, if I heard him right, he was rather having concerns about the methods or the process. So it looks like the president still appreciates the fact that, yes, there could be extracts from the Constitution that we can look at, review, and make amends. But talking about wholesale changing or whatever of the Constitution, he feels strongly, he doesn't really lend his support. And I also support him because why do we change the status quo that has worked? I'm not saying it has worked entirely, but for about 30 years now, this Constitution has been, on the aggregate, very successful. However, time, growing needs, changing needs, transforming society, global issues, other global agencies and stakeholder groups and individuals, behavioral patterns of the people, society and other things, all these matrix of factors call for the need to review our constitutions and see that, okay, this aspect we can amend, this aspect, such as he just cited. That one I think is perfect, and that's what I stand for. Right. But if you say we should change everything entirely, trust me, the new one that we do, a lot of them will contain the same old one. Some of them, you cannot even change them. So I think that is what the president means. Okay. That we should rather consider extracts rather than wholesale. And he also said something that legally I don't understand. I don't know. Okay. That he said that the task doesn't lie solely with the presidents of the republic or something. I don't know if I heard him right. Okay, he said something like that. And I don't know the legal interpretation.
It's an issue that actually lawyer Bobby Bansing, who joined us for the conversation yesterday, pointed out to me that it has been determined by the Supreme Court that there was no problem with the way the president went about it. Because
that is Prof. Mills or
Professor Mills.
Okay,
the way Professor Mills went about it, because eventually it's going to come to Parliament, and then Parliament would arrange for the referendum to happen, and then we would either adopt the.
But hitherto, what was the convention? Or what was the process?
I'm not sure of what the convention has been, but eventually it always ends up in a referendum. But we have Alassane Sweeney back on joining us back via Zoom. So. Mr. Sweeney, so you've heard what the president has said, but I also wanted you to speak to the issue of whether we should be looking for a constitution that's more development-oriented.
Well, I don't understand what you mean by a constitution that is more development-oriented. Because let
me clarify. So the conversation is we've had a constitution we've framed a constitution, drafted a constitution that was to take care of a certain context, and that we wanted political stability at the time. So, and you alluded to that, the fact that we're moving from a military regime to a democratic dispensation. So we have to put some things in place to ensure that that democratic experiment succeeds. Now, that democratic experiment, you can say, having had this going on for nearly 30 years, has succeeded, which, like you say, we appear to have had the last coup behind us. So should we be looking at something that then looks at how more development-oriented? That's the point I was making.
Yes, I get that. But I agree with you, and that is why when I started, I talked about the fact that the Constitution was written for a certain period, taking into consideration the threats of that period, and perhaps that is why we had focus on a constitution. I agree with you, that will guarantee stability. So you had the entrenched clauses in there. You also had a concentration of almost all the power in the executive president. And that is how come even today, Parliament simply does government business. It is just recently that we have tried to introduce a private members bill. Until now, largely every business that was done in Parliament was government business. And that is why we still have the leader of government business as minister in Parliament, so that the executive always gets its business done on the floor. But it was not entirely focused on just ensuring the stability. If you, for example, look at our principles of state, which is also under the Constitution, it has touched on almost everything that is a developmental deficit in this country. For example, in the area of human rights, it tells you what the nation should be looking at. In the area of even the economy, in the area of morality, in the area of public health, in the area of transportation, it is all captured under the principles of state policy, in the 1992 Constitution. And I look at that, part of the Constitution, and it is development focused. And it is from there that many of our acts of Parliament have even stemmed from. So you have the RTIs, you have the almost all the legislations that we have had has stemmed from the principles of state policy. And so I tend to think that the Constitution, the 1992 Constitution, even in its current form, it's development focused. But yes, if there is an agreement for us to fine tune it, I am sure that current trends, for example, IT and others that have come about and driving business and the economy can find expression in the review, which will serve the current trends and perhaps even future expectations. So we can continue the discussion, like I stated earlier, picking it from where the past presidents left off. And that is where I tend not to entirely agree with the president when he says it does not lie with the president. I think that we know in this country that for discussions like this to be moved from the platforms where they are conducted to action, you will need some executive push. And for example, you will need the president to look at the white paper that was issued by his predecessor. If there's anything that he also wants to agree with or disagree with, make it known. Forward, for example, the report of the Constitutional Review Commission to Parliament for consideration, and possibly a discussion around a referendum. That is after all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. That is how the discussion can be moved forward. It will need that executive push for it to be moved forward. I think that, like I indicated, we all as a nation have agreed over the period that there's a need for us to fine-tune the Constitution. And that is what led to the formation of the Review Commission in the first place. And mind you, it was made up of very, very distinguished personalities. I mean, Professor Raymond Atuguba is no mean person when it comes to the law in this country. I remember there was Dr. Gambila on it, a former deputy finance minister under President Kufuor's era. I think the late Apia Minka was also on it. I mean, these are people who served and distinguished themselves in the areas that they served in. And there were also some chiefs on it as well. So it was a carefully thought of commission put together, represented almost every shade of opinion in the country. And they also did an extensive work, by going around the country and interacting with various groups, and finally filtering the views that they got. And arriving at what they arrived at. A number of very useful things were suggested for consideration. And that is why I find the current discussion interesting, because almost all the areas that people are seeing to be of concern were touched on. For example, whether chiefs can even play politics, whether Parliament is serving the role that it should serve, what the limitations are, what can be done. They considered all of these things, and I think that it will be useful if we get that executive push that is necessary for us to pick the pieces from where the former president left up with the white paper. And maybe just by the way, I am excited that we all tend to now have a proper meaning of what a review is.
I get what you're trying to do now. Okay, he says he's happy that we now appreciate what when we say a review. There's this conversation about SHS free SHS being reviewed, and then they will say, "Oh, you mean to scrap? You need to do away with free SHS." Maybe I'll let you, Alasa Sweeney, explain it.
Yes, I think it's all right. I mean, just listening to the conversation here.
He just wants to make a point.
Okay, sure, sorry.
Yes, just listening to the conversation here, we all understand that there are maybe three propositions. You have those who say discard the Constitution, that is, scrap the Constitution and do a new one. You have those who say we should review the Constitution and look at the gray areas and make it right. And it is based on this discussion that I am satisfied that there's no longer a debate over whether review means cancellation or it really means what it means.
Okay,
make something
Dr.
better.
Amwa is just shaking his head.
As in the discussion of the free SHS, like you rightly pointed, it was as if a review just meant cancellation and throw it away.
One problem we have in our country is that, not with Honorable Suhini's statement alone, we tend to, in my opinion, try to do propaganda with statements and comments and give it different meanings. The issue about even SHS and this one, they are entirely two different issues. Schools are daily going through reviews. That's why I have M&E.
No, you continue making your point.
But I want to talk so that he doesn't distract you.
Oh, no, he's not distracting you.
Sorry, please, I'm not.
Then I'll do that. You shouldn't stop me.
Oh, no. I'm saying, go ahead.
So if I'm distracted, you should stop laughing, then I'm
okay. Yes.
Thank you. What I'm saying is that all the schools in Ghana, even before free SHS, we have monies allocated to district heads for monitoring and evaluations. And these are review exercises. So what are they talking about? If we want to get serious with this review and SHS and change, these are all semantics and, the way the communist inferior tactics do their politics since, those days up to now.
I think the point is just...
I'm not talking about his point alone. The issue of review that we're talking about is entirely different from this. We don't review our constitution. It's not part of us. It's not a process. It's not a routine. Now we feel it has gone through the cycle. There are growing and changing needs. We want to do something to it. Then we can say, okay, let's review, look at areas we can amend. Others are saying we should entirely scrap and bring. It's entirely different. Because we can't tell people that, now there's difference between review and no. Education field is always or must always be reviewed because we have monitoring and evaluation exercises that calls for constant changes. It's there. It's different from this.
All right.
Don't let us joke with words and people will take, they are the same. I don't do it. I'm very detailed about some of these social discussions. So they are entirely different. Unless somebody will tell me that education, there's nothing like monitoring and evaluation. And monitoring, evaluation, and adjustment basically is talking about review. You check what is happening and make amends.
All right. Now that we both agree that something has to be done about the Constitution, the conversation then is some of the areas that we should be looking at. One of the areas that has come up strongly has to do with the structure and how much influence or power is left with the executive. There are those who are saying that the Constitution, the way it is now, vests so much power in the executive, which is the president. So much so that we're not having the checks and balances as we're supposed to have in a structure, in a typical constitution or democracy where the three arms of government, can check each other. The president is probably way too powerful. What do you make of that conversation?
I think...
And maybe let me just add to it. It also goes to buttress a point that we were making earlier, that at the time the Constitution was being drafted, probably the framers were having a military, somebody who has been in power for so long, coming from the military era. And so we have to find a way of easing him out, so that if you don't put him in a presidency, that you strip him of many of the powers. So let's still make him feel comfortable enough. And so let's give him all the power to appoint as many people, the people in the various organs as possible. So that brings me back to the conversation. Now, is that something that we should look at, considering the amount of power vested in the president?
I think this issue has given rise to much controversy among key stakeholders and even the citizenry. It's really like everybody is saying that, the president is having too much power? There seems to be too much power imbalance. And because of that, probably some of the things presidents do, not one president, do not normally reflect the interests of the people. I think I share that sentiment.
All right.
I think I share that sentiment. I think the essence of democracy is to ensure that at least there is meaningful amount of power when it comes to decision making, affecting state resources, properties, and activities. People should have their hands on. But if the power is said that I alone, because if you're one person, apart from God, you can make a lot of mistakes. Even, I think, the followers of Christ, I'm not the Islamic person, so I don't know, but I'm sure even there are a lot of mistakes. Even angels, probably out of mistakes, some of them were thrown down. So anytime there's power imbalance, there's this danger of decision-making processes being integrated or being actually left to be controlled by arbitrariness, which might not necessarily be deliberate on the part of the president, A or B or C. So I think it is an area we should look at critically.
All right.
We should look at critically. But I also think that even absolute democracy, in my opinion, and the bone of absolute democracy, to me, is also too hard for a developing economy such as ours. Because sometimes those powers that the presidents also have sometimes also help. Because sometimes, because of democracy, simple things that could be done to let things go
tend to drag.
It will drag for years.
Bureaucracy.
I hope you understand what I'm saying. If you look at even most of the well-cherished modern day economies or societies such as Rwanda, even Singapore, South Korea, you realize that more or less there is a mixture of democracy and autocracy.
Yeah.
I'm not calling for military rule or absolute autocracy, but I also think per our mindset and our attitudes and our behaviors and our conventions and our values and cultural stuff and ritual behaviors, I think sometimes too much of power to the people also lead to delay and destruction of most of our social values, which could rather serve as functions of our performances. So I think we need to look at that critically. It has its good side and it has its bad side.
All right.
And that is why one thing that Suhini said, Honorable said, I was very happy with, the caliber of people that were on board when Professor Mills attempt to let us work on the Constitution. I think we need to also get same team, caliber of team. And they also should include young people. The names that he was mentioning were, almost all of them were old people. I'm not saying old people are not good, they have experience. But trust me, strategy has about three lenses: experience and by technique, and also by ideas.
Right.
And I think sometimes modern day young ones, a lot of them could apply a lot of evaluative techniques and other things, and make sure that what we put in there will also serve the need of today and also going forward.
Right.
So I think they should include the young people who have their ideas and input into some of these as also very important. They shouldn't assemble only old men. I don't think that is important.
All right, so Alassane Sweeney, Dr. Amwa believes that, yes, he agrees that the presidency or the executive seems to have quite a bit of power, and that we should find a way of redrawing that balance. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, your analogy is right. I mean, you had someone who had absolute power by way of seizing it through a military coup, and had to be transitioned into a democracy where the absolute power had to be shedded off. And so it needed to be done, not drastically, but, with some level of attention to the absolute power that the person had, so that it didn't impact him greatly. And so that consideration, I'm sure, was what was factored into centralizing the power the way it is being centralized in our constitution, where the president basically everybody in government. I mean, board members, now it is even extended to deputy directors, at institutions. I mean, I think it is too much. It is something that we need to have a structure to take care of, and not one man, being Tarzan and doing all of those things. But I also agree that, and maybe let me share this with you, something my late grandfather always used to say about Africa and democracy. For him, at our level of development, he likened our situation to fastening things, using a hammer and a nail. If you want to fasten things in a less developed environment, treat it like a hammer and a nail. You will fasten them, but you will need some force, and you will need the nail to bind it together. In the developed countries, he likened it to a screw and a screwdriver. Maybe it's because he was a military man, so that was his interpretation of things. But if you actually look into history, most of the countries that we compare ourselves to by way of development did not also start being this liberal. They also started with certain level of what is known as democratic centralism, where the power is still concentrated somehow for some decisions to be made, especially when those decisions do not appear very popular with the masses, but the leadership can see far ahead how impactful and useful those decisions can be. That is what is called the democratic centralism. So yes, even as we call for the review that will lead to shedding of some of the powers of the president, we need to understand that we will still need a segment where a hammer and a nail sometimes are what is needed to put things together, and not necessarily a screw and a screwdriver, where things are normal and laws work and people behave in a much better way. They have a much better attitude than we do at our level. So let us be careful when we say that we are going to shed the power that is concentrated in the executive, even though I agree that it is too much. Some of it should be taken away, but I also recognize the principle of democratic centralism, even in a democracy.
All right. It's great that the conversation is proceeding quite smoothly so far. You both seem to agree on most of the things that we're talking about. Now, let me move on to one other plank that has come up, which has to do with the treatment of Article 71 office holders. There are those who are saying that, and it's come up in the recent demonstration by public sector workers who were saying they got some 4% as salary increase, and yet the Article 71 office holders, they who are in a much privileged position already got a lot more. And so the conversation is about can we look at this issue of Article 71 office holders and look at emoluments for everybody else? And in the conversation we had yesterday with the renowned HR practitioner and thought leader, Dr. Hazel Barad Amwa, she was saying, or she suggested something to the fact we probably could have everybody on a single spine, from the president all the way to the end. She's not saying that we should give them the same salaries. She said you can give the president whatever amount you're going to give the president, but then we should look at whatever increase you're going to give. If you're going to give 1% increase, probably everybody should get 1% increase across the spine. I'd want to start with you, Alastair. What do you make of that one?
Yes, so I agree with you again that we all seem to agree on many of the issues that we have raised, except the question of review, which my brother started with an advice and then
no. Let's not go back.
But that's just by the way. We'll move forward. He says for propaganda reasons we changed the interpretations of things, and then he went right ahead to do exactly that by trying to change the meaning of review based on different contexts. But that's just by the way. Now, I think that the question of Article 71 holders over the period, we've all contributed to the misunderstanding that a lot of people have of what it represents. I don't excuse myself at all because I worked in the media for a very long time, and we all contributed to the misunderstanding that I now see exists as far as holders of Article 71 offices are concerned when it comes to their emoluments. But I think that we can address or cure that if we, for example, set up an emoluments committee or a commission that is responsible for determining emoluments for everyone, public sector workers, and even Article 71 office holders. I mean, it is going to, and even the issue of whether spouses of ex-presidents and presidents should be taken care of will be determined by this emoluments committee or commission, so that it does not lie in the hands of the president or parliament to determine what each of them gets. I mean, it now becomes, a professional thing that is done based on a certain criteria that is used by the emoluments committee to determine the compensations that all categories of workers, are entitled to. Yeah. So if you look at it critically, the misunderstanding has always come from the fact that over the period, we have not, as a people, tried to explain the circumstances, and I'll use Parliament for example.
All right.
Look, as a member of Parliament in the 8th Parliament, fortunately I was in the 7th Parliament. So in the 8th Parliament, I am taking salary of the 7th Parliament. And in the 7th Parliament, I was taking salary of the 6th Parliament. Because the Constitution says that a president should set up a committee that will determine the salaries of parliamentarians. That is Article 71 office holders, including judiciary and others. Now, over the period, presidents have turned around to set up these committees late in the day. So as we speak, the committee is not being formed for 71 office holders of Article 71. So we are basically being treated under the conditions of service for the previous parliament or the previous office holders. So at the end of the period, when the committee is set up, the committee then determines how much we should have been paid from January 7, 2021.
Yeah.
And then, because we're not paid that much, it is calculated over the period of 4 years. The arrears, the extra that we should have been paid is calculated over the period and paid to us as ESB. So it is actually salary arrears, which over the period have been termed end of service benefit, but it is actually not end of service benefit. For example, if I was supposed to be taking 1,005 today, and I am taking 1,200, and I'm not using denominations, so you can imagine whatever. But if I was paid to pay 1,000, we pay 1,005, and I'm taking 1,002 today, and then the committee sets up maybe in the third or fourth year of the president and determines that I should have been paid 1,005 from January 7, 2021. Then they will calculate the 300 Ghana cedis short by 4 years, and then pay it to me as lump sum. That is what usually generates the uproar. And that is why I say it is because over the period, we have really not taken our time to explain it well and for people to understand. So that, for example, we can say that because of that uproar, we do not want the arrears again. Let the president do what he's supposed to do as one of the first things he does before he is sworn in, when he is sworn into office. Set up the committee, determine my conditions of service, and let me receive it bi-monthly, so that you don't owe me and pay me arrears at the end of 4 years. That becomes a lump sum for me. That will create the unnecessary, agitations. In the area of, for example, car loans, Parliament, again, is one institution that, in my view, has been given a raw deal over the period, because almost all Article 71 office holders are given state vehicles that are chauffeur-driven and fueled by the state and serviced by the state. So you have the judiciary, they are given vehicles. They have drivers that the state pays. The state provides them with fuel, and the state services those vehicles. The same is for a Council of State members. But you see, the part for MPs, I don't think came out of the blue. I think it was based on good intentions, where they said that the MPs must contribute to getting their own cars by way of taking loans from the states that are subsidized. Yeah. Now, if you compare the number of MPs we have, which is likely to increase, the cost the state will have to bear to provide them with vehicles and provide them with drivers and fuel and servicing and maintenance is so huge. How many judges do we have? So the state can take care of that. How many council of state members do we have? So the state can do that. But now we have 275 members of parliament, and likely we will increase because we have just finished a population census.
Right.
If the state is going to be providing vehicles for these 275, maintaining and providing drivers and paying the drivers and servicing those vehicles, you can imagine the cost. So the people who thought of the car loan at the time, I'm sure were considering the impact of that on the state and decided that why don't we let the MPs have their cars so that they are responsible for finding a driver if they want and paying the driver if they want. They maintain the car when it breaks down. They service the car whatever mileage they do, and does not come to the state. But over the period, this has also not been explained so well to the people. And that is why the last time, Parliament had a discussion on this, a lot of us, I thought, got emotive. And instead of making people understand our situation, threw our hands in the air and contradicted ourselves when we said, look, we do not want the car loans anymore because we are interested in preserving the state purse and protecting the state purse. So we don't want the car loans anymore.
Mr. Sweeney, you make a good argument when it comes to just the issue of MPs. But the conversation is not so much about just the MPs. They're looking at the Article 71 office holders altogether as a whole. Yeah. And so let's not make it so much about, but yes, you can argue about it.
I agree with you. That is why I started by saying that to deal with it, we need an emoluments committee or commission.
All right.
That will be a standing commission looking at emoluments across board. But I am saying that over the period, the issue of Article 71 holders have always largely been around emoluments to MPs. For a very long time, some didn't even know that Article 71 office holders included the judiciary and even members of the Council of State. Because the discussion has always been sparked by how much MPs get by way of car loans or by way of what is mistakenly called ESB. So that is why I went in that direction to explain that. But I understand that the discussion is about Article 71 office holders. And I think the best cure to it is for us to have a standing emoluments commission, just as we have the Fair Wages Commission, determining emoluments of all public sector workers, including Article 71 office holders.
All right, thank you very much. So I come to you, Dr. Amwa. So he's made his point. He agrees that, yes, we probably should be looking at an emolument commission that would look at everybody else so that we have something that's a lot fairer. What's your position on that?
I think everything I'm supposed to say...
He said it.
He said it.
Right.
But there's something which is missing. We are not looking at. I think one of the reasons most African countries, including Ghana, this is my opinion, I could be wrong, we either misapply foreign models or even our own policies designed and used or outlaid are not most of the times best fit or fitting our situations. We tend to gloss over prevailing issues, analyzing them and understanding them in our context, and design models and methods and solutions to make sure that, yes, this is our situation. This is how best our model or solutions must be, in which context.
Can you give us an example?
Let me tell you something. A lot of the, I won't say noise, forgive me, destructive interference of waves in our society today, although they are right. For instance, lecturers, health workers, to me, within the civil service or the public service, to me, I respect them most. They are the only areas I can say in terms of productivity, teachers, nurses, lecturers, they are wonderful. Monies paid to them, to me, are not enough, I agree. But behind the scenes, when you meet some of them, they say that, oh, the MPs are giving this. Why not we? Article 71 and that. If we want to find very fair line of emolument outlay, I agree. But that dimension they go. My brother, I'm being very practical. When he said this, somebody said that, oh, why should MP come on TV or radio and talk about how he or they, the MPs are spending? And I'm like, wow, what's wrong with that? Our society is quite different. I'm being honest with you. No MP, unless maybe, I don't know how the other MPs behave, but if you're MP who really, or that wants to help society and community, and you know that people, when you ask them for something they don't even have, they don't feel comfortable, they always want to give. My brother, they can give us 100,000 a month or even 2 months.
Yeah.
It can never, ever equate the pressure on you from society. And somebody said that, oh, you decided to be MP. No problem. I'm sure a time may come, if this thing doesn't change, the very good people in our society will leave corridors of politics and will not argue war for us. Because we have a society that almost every community, people who are very poor, they can't get food to eat. They can't pay their school fee. They are dying in hospitals. They will come to your doorstep. And even now, it's getting to the point that almost everywhere, and it's the doing of MPP and DC. When the NDC, they are in power, we use things we are not supposed to use against them. And they also use things they are not supposed to use against us. So we have defined appraisal tool or method for the public. So even things that are not within the jurisdiction of the MP, such as fixing bridges, light, somebody dying, hospital not good, they push all onto the MPs. And trust me, if I quote how much probably I need to get a week, you will not believe me. I'll say it off air. So people should also be honest enough and understand that our society is such that if somebody comes out as a politician, you move out of here. At the airport, at the filling stations, church places, every community, at the funerals, in your homes, not your family members. Somebody is dying, Kolebu, I need 300,000 cedis to top my medical bills. So in analyzing these things, we shouldn't take this out of context, because some of these things are also influencing and enhancing corruption.
Yeah.
So we need to be honest.
Okay, sure.
Analyzing all these things, then people can make the statements they make.
Yeah.
If not, we'll design a very fair line, one structure, single spine, and trust me, it will not practically work.
You said something that I find quite instructive. You essentially say it's the doing of the MPP and the NDC. The NDC will use something against the MPP, and then the MPP eventually also use it again. To me, it sounds like then the two parties are the problems of this country.
Oh, Ghanaians are problems. No. You see, let me tell you something. Anything that you find NDC, MPP people doing, it's not because the NDC, MPP or politicians.
It's Ghanaians who made them do that.
If you like right now, take Honorable Suhini, His Excellency former President Mahama, President, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa, everybody, all the active politicians, take us away. Bring new set of Ghanaians. This is where we make mistakes. The problems we are having in our country is not because the definition and the ethos and the works and activities of politics. It is the behavioral pattern of ordinary Ghanaians.
Okay.
Sorry, Ghanaian or Ghanaians as a whole. So these issues must be addressed in the context of our own behaviors. Okay. Not because somebody is in one organization. But I'm saying that right now, if there should be competition among media houses, you see what they will do. Oh, Joy FM, another media house will try to put you in a situation that does not even fit media practice.
Okay.
And by doing that constantly, after some time, the general public will then define what they think should be your performance.
Yeah.
And this is destroying us.
Okay. Now,
I don't know if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, sure. We have very little time. Our time is up, but I would like us to end on the work of the Privileges Committee, and I'd come to you, Alassane Suhuyini. How far with the issue you're having with the issue you took to the Privileges Committee as far as Kennedy Agyapong is concerned?
Well, I would have loved to take a bite on whether NPP and NDC are the problems in this country, but you have also raised an equally important matter that I need to speak to. Yes, what happened was that the Privileges Committee could not find a suitable time to meet myself and Honorable Kennedy Agyapong before the House rose. And I understand at their last meeting, there was an agreement for them not to sit during recess because some members didn't want a situation where a meeting will be called at a time many members are in their constituency and are unable to attend the meeting. And you know the way the House operates. If they were not able to attend, then the committee formed a quorum. Matters could easily be dismissed or, taken in a direction that others may not be comfortable with. But because a quorum is formed, it will become difficult to challenge it. So the members at their last meeting agreed not to sit during recess. And so I'm confident that when the House resumes from recess, the committee members will meet again and determine a day to meet myself and Honorable Kennedy Agyapong. That is the information I have from the committee. And I think it was a logical, decision to have been reached because, the country is that big. During recess, many members are usually in their constituencies, interacting with their constituents. And if a committee meeting is called and a member is not able to attend, it can impact on the sittings. But if you just allow me a minute.
Oh, no, we don't have any more time, actually, unfortunately. We have to go. But thank you very much, Alassane Suhuyini, Tamale North MP, for joining us for AM Talk. I'd like to give you the last word, and also on the Privileges Committee issue. And
the Privileges Committee issue. Yes, just as he said, I'm a member of the committee, and we needed the two of them. Actually, not that we extended officially invitation to them and they did not attend. So the time that we wanted to sit down, we could not even have them, so we had to postpone it. But then, my brother, I think sometimes things are very funny, the way people want to behave. When I speak, I'm not an angel. I'm not holy. But sometimes I think Ghanaians shouldn't think it's only fornication and murder that are sins in Ghana per our Bibles and Qurans.
Right.
Look, the Standing Order 28 actually stipulate what constitutes privileged committee handling such issues.
Okay.
And I'm coming. Let me land with this. And I want you to go and read. Actions or whatever, or omissions which impede Parliament in its functions, or officer or member of Parliament in discharge of its duties, you come to a code of conduct 2. It specifies that somebody's private life cannot constitute these things. So now that I'm here, if I have issues with you, and I even threaten you, what has it got to do with Parliament? What has it? And the civil action could be taken. I'm not saying what Kennedy did was right or wrong, but we have to be very serious in our country, especially when it has to deal with certain levels and positions. Right now, if I misbehave towards you, I threaten you, I could be taken to court, civil case, no problem. It's a bad behavior. But what has that got to do with Parliament? Then people who are fighting their wives on the street, being slapped and slapping back, should be pulled by the Privileges Committee. So
the issue is it brings Parliament into disrepute.
So then everybody will be brought. So if out there, if I insult somebody, if I slap somebody, I should be brought to Parliament. Is that what we are talking about? It is in the discharge of Parliament functions, or an officer in the discharge of his parliamentary duty. It's there. I'm not saying what Kennedy did was wrong or right. I'm not talking about that. But I think as a people, we need to be more serious and sometimes reduce the antagonism because of politics. Once we do that, we create platforms. That is what I was talking about NDC and PP. When we unnecessarily bring in politics and try to do things just for political power and other things, then we define the public to always attack us. That's what I'm talking about.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stephen Amwa, MP for Nshai. So, and to you too, Alasan Suyini, Tamale North MP, for joining us for AM Talk. Thank you too for watching. We're taking a break, after which we're bringing you showbiz. Do stay tuned in. You're still watching the AM show on Joy News.